Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Behnaz Mansouri and I'm a senior attorney with the Unemployment Law Project. The Unemployment Law Project has been around since 1984. We are the only freestanding legal aid office in the country solely dedicated to unemployment. The Unemployment Law Project provides low-cost representation and free advice and counsel to people in Washington State who have been denied unemployment benefits or whose award of benefits is being challenged. We're here today with our weekly webinar, which occurs every Monday at noon. The purpose of today's webinar is to share the latest news on unemployment benefits, provide information about a recently filed lawsuit, and to answer your questions. We'll share commonly asked questions during the webinar, and then I will be monitoring your questions in the Q&A box today. I'd like to introduce our speakers from the Unemployment Law Project, Executive Director John Tierpak and Staff Attorney Ann Paxton. I'll now turn it over to you, Ann, to get us started.
Thank you, Behnaz, and welcome everyone. This is a really busy week. We have, once again, news hot off the presses from this morning as well as from Friday. Just to give a quick overview of where claims levels are and about the jobs report, which just came out at 10 o'clock. The Reuters report is that according to the Department of Labor, job openings rose 518,000 to 5.9 million on the last day of June. A lot of people are voluntarily quitting their jobs, which is normally considered a sign of confidence in the job market. However, as we all know, there's a lot of other reasons why people might be quitting their jobs these days. So some of these statistics are hard to read, and you can tell from the tone of the Reuters article this morning that Reuters is not convinced that the labor market is really on a great trend. It says that the indicators from DOL, the Department of Labor, suggests they're exaggerating the labor market health. There were still, with the vacancies in June, there were still 3 people per job opening. So the job market is still not recovered by any stretch. And in terms of claim levels, the report from Washington State is claim levels are slightly lower. They dropped 13.4% from the last week. In the week ending August 1st, they dropped 13% from the prior week. But the state's weekly claim level is still at historic levels, nearly 4.5 times the level of last year at this time, but it is at the lowest level since mid-March. The state economist does not think of it as a trend. He says it's more of a squiggle, so no definitive conclusions can be drawn from those numbers either. So the big thing that we wanted to cover is the proposal by President Trump to sort of unilaterally extend the PUC a $600 payment, which expired last week. So this was in the form of an executive order, allegedly, but it was actually a memorandum from the White House. So there's a lot of problematic legal issues surrounding its enforceability and it's whether it's authorized. So the executive order, we'll call it that. It would continue the $600 at a 2/3 level, but require the states to cover 25% of that. So states would have to come up with $100 and the federal government would come up with $300. If the states do not come up with $100, there's no money from the feds. So, but that's a secondary question. The main question right now is whether the president has this authority to unilaterally order an extension of the PUC without the assent of Congress, because under the Constitution, Congress is constitutionally empowered to handle appropriations and taxation. The executive branch, under many Supreme Court rulings, may not authorize payments from the Treasury beyond congressionally authorized amounts. So we can expect some fights over that, and it leaves the whole thing up in the air as to whether anything's actually going to happen. But if it does happen, there are several other problems that would accompany it. One is that the amount allocated under the president's proposal is only $44 billion, which is a sixth of what has been paid so far under the PUC benefits, and would be exhausted in a couple of months, not at December 31st when the PUA is supposed to end and this PUC extension is supposed to end. As I said, it would only go to recipients in states that are willing to put up $100. So Washington and other states would have to decide whether that is going to fit into their budget. In addition, the benefit would only go to people receiving at least $100 in benefits, which would be, in most people, since Washington's minimum benefit is $201, most people would qualify, except in the cases where people are making a little bit of extra money doing part-time work, or for some reason, for some other reason, they have their benefit lowered. If it falls below $100, they wouldn't be eligible for the PUC. So it has a lot of quirks in it, even if it does happen. Right now, Washington is paying 444,000 claimants every week. So $100 payment added onto that, onto all those claims, would be $44 million, which is the equivalent between now and December 31st of at least $1 billion. So there's not a lot of enthusiasm or optimism about whether this could be practical or logistical. In addition to, and another logistical issue is that the Employment Security Department has said it would take at least 2 weeks just to do a plain flat payment under the PUC extending the PUC. But to set up a payment that's complicated like this, that involves a state contribution and it has exceptions and other aspects, that would take probably months. So that doesn't even get into the question of whether this is an adequate benefit. Meanwhile, the struggle between the Democratic-led House and the Republican-led Senate continues. So we'll have to wait to see what happens with that. Trump's comment on this issue of the states coming up with $100 to make it a $400 benefit was that they would be asked to use existing funding, such as the tens of millions of dollars available to them through the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And he said if they don't wish to do it, the states don't have to do it, that's going to be their problem. And they have the money. So that's debatable, according to a lot of sources. So there's a lot of press about that this week. The comment in terms of the substantive value is states cannot use their current unemployment insurance infrastructure to pay a benefit that is not authorized by Congress. That is the comment from the National Employment Law Project. So structurally, there are a lot of issues here that have to remain resolved. So on the issue of, just to mention briefly, the changes in the state job safety, job search and waiting week requirements, that they've been extended till September 1st. That means that the waiting week is still going to be covered, still will be paid by the federal government under your regular benefits or PUA benefits. And the job search has continued to be suspended. So we would probably expect that the legislature will again take that up at the end of August to see if they will extend it beyond September 1st. Right now, that is the deadline. And the PPP loan program, which is to help help businesses and self-employed keep people on the payroll. Those applications have been extended to August 8th, so that is already expired. So one of the other big issues of concern recently has been return to work or remaining at work where there might be an issue of worker safety, and how will that affect your unemployment benefits? Everyone, we've talked before about suitable work, that you do not have to accept a job that is not considered suitable work, and worker safety is a large part of that. The issue and confusion arises from how you can establish that a workplace is safe, or how you can establish that it's unsafe. So in a recent workshop with the Department of Health, we got a lot of information about the details on how those requirements about workplace safety can be met. First of all, there's 5 or 6 requirements that employers must meet. The first is an employer-employee relationship, that employers cannot allow sick workers to be at work. They have to have some kind of process in place so that either some kind of screening or some sort of action will prevent sick workers from coming to work. And then they have to assess during the day if a worker becomes ill at work, whether they have a system, whether they can send them, they should be able to send them home. Secondly, they have to require social distancing. Third, they must provide COVID-19 awareness training. So employer training, social distancing, and then masking plus face coverings is what they're saying. And then depending on what the job is, they might have to step up to disposable respirators or even tight-fitting disposable masks or stronger measures in some cases. And the employer has to have a plan. So part of that is their COVID-19 response plan. They have to have thought out all the procedures for dealing with sick workers and their training, what their rules are, how workers are going to get their work done in light of COVID transmission. So they're advising any workers who have concerns about their workplace safety, and these are going to be increasingly significant issues, to get in touch with the Department of Health. And I think been asked to maybe post that on the chat for people to get the phone number or the website where you can contact. What they say is, we will talk with the worker and walk them through the process. We will help any of you as an advocate and representative of you, and to get you to the place, the part of the state agency that you need to go to in order to get help that you need if it's a worker safety issue. And then they will take action accordingly. So that is what the Department of Health is promising. One note about it, I may have mentioned before that in order to, they have stressed that in order to establish that your workplace is unsafe and therefore you have the right to be not at the workplace, you need to have a specific, point to a specific problem, some lapse that the employer has made in terms of meeting those requirements. So it's important to, if you can, it's important to get in touch with the Department of Health at first to make sure that you are in line with what their requirements are and can make the case if you need to on your unemployment claims. They do have a specific definition for workplace cluster of COVID, and it's 2 or more confirmed or probable cases. And the 2 of those cases have to have their onset within 14 days of each other. So you can see there's several specifics that you may want to consider if this is the kind of situation that you're dealing with. But you can get more help. I think they're answering the phone better there, from what I've heard, than they have been at ESD. They say if during your interview process for jobs you indicate that you're not able to go through isolation or quarantine without support, we're able to provide some of those materials. If you say, for example, that you need to have, that you can't, you'll be in trouble if you can't leave your home, they can arrange to have food delivered, or even point you to how you can get pharmacy items. And they've said even we figured out ways to pay rent and utility bills. So they've taken it very seriously because it is a public health issue in addition to an individual rights issue. And they have certain conditions that have to be met in order to prompt an outbreak investigation. In order for the employer to be involved, there has to be some kind of plausible linkage to the workplace. They say, for example, people do spend time together in the workplace and they don't have any other linkage outside the workplace, such as living together or riding in the same private car. That would be an indicator that it's workplace related. Unfortunately, there's some disincentives on the part of employers to adopt all of the workplace safety measures, but they are strongly emphasizing that. And they found in some cases it's more lack of awareness for exactly how to do it. The governor has come out in July with a strong statement saying that all employers are required to cooperate with public health authorities to investigate cases where there's been a suspected outbreak of COVID-19. And the health department did specifically say if employers are not cooperating with a directive relating to public health, we will issue them a violation with a penalty, more likely than not. And if they haven't had to do that yet, they've engaged in what they call strong conversations, and those have been successful in most cases. So see that phone number and website for more information. So a couple of points, and we do want to move to questions from individuals, members of the audience, but a couple of points have been clarified about continuing eligibility, or maybe not clarified, but at least we've gotten some statements from the Department of Labor. One is that in order to file for PUA, the requirement now is that if you have already established a claim, you're going to have to reestablish it every week. You have to certify that with your continued claim that one of the enumerated reasons continues to apply. And what we have heard from many claimants is that they think they've been told to reapply for benefits. And this may be a reflection of the Employment Security Department saying you have to recertify that you're eligible. We're not sure, but we do know there's a lot of confusion out there about that. What happens is when you apply, you will get a new set of questions. This just came down from the Department of Labor that have to be answered. If you apply by phone, this is online. If you apply by phone, you'll immediately get those questions as well, and you have to answer them very quickly. The questionnaire is a requirement in order to proceed. So they've been clamping down quite a bit on continued eligibility.
Anne, may I jump in for a moment?
Yes.
Thank you. We have actually a question related to the issue you're just discussing. It looks like a participant is asking their filings, they had hours of work were reduced due to COVID. And if they answer the new questions, it looks like they're going to have to answer them in the negative, and their concern is that they're going to be denied benefits. Do we have any indication on, is there some other way to answer these questions, or is there someone to speak with at ESD prior to answering these questions? And if they answer and it's negative, what advice would we give if they're denied?
Did she give an example, or he give an example of the question?
Yeah, the example is that a part-time McDonald's worker who was taken off the schedule beginning in March and has never been put back on due to fewer workers being needed. So the question is, there's no question that asks them whether their work hours have been reduced or eliminated due to COVID. The closest thing is a question that asks if the business where you've worked has closed due to COVID. So complete closure versus an hours reduction or a lack of work. If the claimant answers no, that the business hasn't closed, there's some concern that the claimant's going to be denied PUA for that reason.
So I can't really answer that definitively, but I do know there's this whole new set of new questions. I gather that you, for example, if you have to say, one thing I do know is if you are asked, are you able and available to work, or unable and available to work, that you can say no, because if it's related to a COVID-19 reason, then your eligibility should not be in question. So it may look like, I don't know how to answer that. It sounds like there should be room for a cutback in hours, but I don't know.
Okay, and there's a follow-up question. Thank you, Anne. There's a follow-up question. Since the form is only yes or no, do we have any advice on, is there a way to submit details about the worker situation so that a determination, which they're making on case by case, can be made with further information? Would you suggest a message through their SAW account, or calling the 800 number and hopefully trying to get through? Any other recommendations?
At least the message from the SAW account, you can be kind of get some assurance that it went through, and the phone system is not that responsive. So I would try an e-message, and again, you can always try the phone system, but if you want to add details, unfortunately their questionnaires are often just very, very constrained. You don't have a lot of options. John, did you have any advice about that?
Well, I'm just going back to some basics. Always answer questions accurately, and if you're denied, request the hearing right away. Messaging is a good idea, and to keep a record of those messages, because if the message somehow disappears, you have a record that you did inform them of correct information. I think it's a good example of some of the problems with the system that doesn't allow explanations. And I've had many questions over the last months that fit into the category, if I answer yes, that's not wholly accurate. If I answer no, that's not wholly accurate either. So this has been an ongoing problem, but report the best you can right now.
Thank you. Just to, before we move on to audience questions, I want to answer what is one of the biggest ones that we always get and really should be, and that is, what can you do when you're blocked from finding out anything, when you're denied and you don't understand why, and you're in a situation where you have to talk with somebody at ESD and you can't get through. So there aren't a lot of options, but what we can recommend is this. So one thing is to carefully read the notices you get, because it's occasionally true that you may have missed something. It's easy to miss a request for information that they're asking for. And I'm not saying they always respond or acknowledge that they got information you definitely sent, but sometimes you can miss information that they're asking for, or miss an important deadline for submission of documents, so or an appeal notice. So those may be in the notices. That's not a big chance, but some chance. The main thing is to write to your legislative representatives, and even repeatedly. We've had a lot of people who have had success. Not everyone, but we do know thousands of people have gotten some action from writing to their legislators and getting constituent request action by ESD. But also the secondary benefit to that is you let them know the depth of the problem, and that they may be able to refer your situation not only to the department, but also to consider changes that may need to be made in the next legislature. If there is a complaint or a petition, and as you know, we have a petition for writ of mandamus before the Supreme Court, send in your story. You can call us or write us. And we do not have a class action, but we have several hundred witnesses now who have written up their stories, and the stories have impact. Those are items, witness statements that we can give to the court. And the cases with stories that have been in the press are generally the first ones that the department acts upon, and it also in the case of the lawsuits. And I always consider contacting the newspapers, television stations, radio stations, and so on, and let them know the stories as well. In fact, many of the stations and other news outlets call us and ask us, do you have a claimant that we can talk to on a particular issue? So we're compiling a list of people on different issues that we can refer to them. So please get in touch with us if you would like to be included in that. And I think we can, oh, John, did you want to add anything right now?
Well, just one thing I would like to add. I've had a few questions over the weekend and this morning from people wondering, what is Washington State going to do in terms of the new presidential announcement on Saturday? And so far, we don't have information on that. I've checked the ESD website, and there are not any new updates in that regard. So if you are very curious about that issue, I would check the Employment Security website, esd.wa.gov, to see if there's any postings on that.
Yes. I do know that they were meeting this morning to talk about it. So a lot of things happen on Friday, and that's really a good day to pay attention to the news. And now Monday is here, and we have to see what they do to deal with it. So Benaz, if we have any other questions.
Excellent, thank you. A lot of people have two jobs. If you lose work due to a store closing, but you have a second job, what conditions would qualify you for unemployment under, well, the question is PEUC, but I'm imagining it means what would qualify you for unemployment under pandemic unemployment assistance?
Well, first you have to apply for regular benefits. So if you have 680 hours, and then you would at least get monetary eligibility. Once you are denied regular benefits, then you can turn to pandemic. But if you have two jobs and you qualify, say the person lost one job. Is that what happened, Benos? Okay.
Yes. Lost work due to a store closing. I'm surmising it's probably due to COVID.
And it sounds like the other one is they're continuing with.
Continuing, correct.
If you qualify for benefits based on your base year incomes, the last 4 to 5 quarters, then that would be your weekly benefit amount. But any income that you earn when you file your claim every week, any income that you earn has to be part of it has to be subtracted from that benefit amount. So it will affect your total. And as you can see, there could be serious repercussions if if the Trump proposal goes through, which is your benefit may fall below $100 and you wouldn't get the theoretical $400 PUC benefit. So the point is, go ahead and apply, but you're going to be aware that any income that you make while you're receiving unemployment benefits will need to be subtracted in part from the benefit that you're getting.
Great, thank you. We have a participant who applied in mid-March as a new resident, but was ineligible. She later applied for PUA, but was also deemed ineligible and told to refile. She's now in adjudication because she can't get a Washington ID. Her question is, has she moved to the end of the queue? She's been waiting since March. What are her next options?
So I can't definitively answer if it's in adjudication. That's a pretty murky and very, very packed area at ESD. They still had, at last count, they still had about 30,000 people in that particular phase. So I don't know. John, can you say?
Well, just that, again, going back to the advice of contacting your senator and representatives would be a good plan right now. They should be open to other options as far as ID goes to verify. That may be what would push it to. So I would email and call your state senator and state representatives because you are eligible for benefits.
We have a participant who is residing in Portland, Oregon, but claiming through Washington due to working in Vancouver, Washington. Which legislator would they send their inquiries to?
Well, Oregon wouldn't help. So I would pick a district in which your employer was and use that address to go to the Washington State Legislature website. I know that they want to represent people in their district, but if the employer is in the district, it is related to them.
Great. We have a claimant who has been considered for redetermination, and the letter was notifying them that they're neither approved nor denied. They had previously sent in an appeal, I'm guessing for a denial, prior to receiving this redetermination letter. They continue to receive a weekly benefit. Should they send in the second appeal, the deadline is in September.
So if the appeal relates to regular benefits, then that is essentially a denial is required in order to get PUA. So if the person is on PUA, that's probably why they're getting benefits. This has been kind of an issue for us. You have a 30-day deadline when you get a denial to file an appeal. Should you go ahead and appeal, or should you go ahead and apply for PUA? We've been told you can do both. We've also been told that it is not a requirement to appeal. Some people have gotten bad information about this. It is not a requirement to appeal in order to get PUA. But the problem with the cohort that this person is probably belonging to is a very, very large number of people who have filed appeals, but they haven't been sent off to the Office of Administrative Hearings for setting a date for a hearing before a judge. And we've been trying to follow this. We've been trying to get more information from them about what's happened with these, we believe, up close to 40,000 appeals that are at the, still at the Employment Security Department in that quote, post-redetermination stage where, or sort of ambiguously not redetermined, but going to be redetermined, have not been sent over yet. We've just found out that the July numbers of appeals sent over to the Office of Administrative Hearings are still very small, around 3,600. So usually the normal number is about 2,500, but we estimate because of the backlog and the huge surge in claims, denials, and appeals, that there are about 40,000 appeals waiting to go to the Office of Administrative Hearings. We're trying to get clarification on why this is happening and when it will be fixed.
I have some comments on this. This may be the kind of case that's that you should speak to us individually about, because for some people, being denied regular unemployment and then getting pandemic unemployment is just fine. And that's what you should get and what you can get. And even if you won the appeal on the regular denial, it's not really going to get you anything more. However, I've also talked to some people who were denied incorrectly on a claim prior to the pandemic, who, even if they were approved for pandemic later, would benefit from winning an appeal for benefits maybe prior to March. So these are very specific cases, and individual advice is hard to give, like in a general sense. So I would encourage this person to contact us individually for advice and maybe run through it.
Thanks, John. I did provide them with your email address.
Excellent, thank you.
Should substitute educators apply for UI once school starts?
Yes, absolutely. Even with those issues of reasonable assurance during normal school breaks are off the table. And if a substitute is not working, they are unemployed and should qualify. And if they do work, let's say 1 day a week, and they should report that income. If they work many days in a week, more than they would get on their benefits, weekly benefits, then they won't be qualified for that week. But they should keep claiming each week.
Okay. Regarding benefits and weeks, are benefits only good for the 26 out of 52 weeks in a benefit year? And does that mean that the other weeks a person would not receive any money but is still expected to file claims? How does that work?
So I meant to mention the person who the prior question mentioned the PEUC. So that is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, and that is a federal program. Applies both to regular benefits that have exhausted and to PUA that is exhausted. So that adds 13 weeks to your benefits, your 26-week limit in Washington State. So that is one way to extend it. Beyond that, the state is also qualified to offer extended benefits, which is also partly funded by the federal government for 20 weeks. But I always like to mention that there are strong restrictions on extended benefits, and it may require you to consider changing your normal field of work, because they basically say if you cannot find work in the field that you are accustomed to work in, you're expected to take any job that you are physically capable of doing. So that can put you up to 59 weeks potentially, but there will be some strong restrictions. And
one thing I would like to add about the first 26 weeks is that a person may be qualified for those first 26 weeks, but if, for example, they get a job for a few weeks, or if they can't claim for a couple weeks for whatever reason, those benefits won't go away, meaning the 26 weeks will be there. And this occurs during periods of regular unemployment where a person may have a vacation in which they will be traveling for a few weeks, or maybe they're taking time off for family business and are not going to be involved in either a job search or being able to work. They can claim and just answer, are you available for work? No. Are you, no, 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 to all those questions. That money won't go away. And it's also a reason why some people will work a part-time job or take temp jobs to have those benefits extended that way.
Right.
Great, thank you.
This is a good point to mention. The very interesting feature on Facebook called the Washington Unemployment Support Group, because now I have to put a disclaimer here. We can't guarantee the accuracy of the information that's on there because it's other people who are going through similar experiences, but you can do searches on there and find other people's situations. So that is always a useful source of information to get specifics, and you may get some ideas. Again, accuracy not guaranteed, but I found it useful. And you have that link, don't you, Benas? Okay.
I do, and I just posted it in the chat. Thank you. Question regarding PUA, the new questions asks, did your place of employment close as a direct result of the COVID public health emergency? The participant asks if they were let go of employment before the pandemic, do they answer this question yes or no?
That sounds like a tricky situation.
Well, did the person lose, is that business closed now?
I don't know if
Okay.
it's an anonymous question. So if
Okay. Well, I mean, my view is that if it asks if the business you worked at is closed now, then that answer would be yes. If it's not, the answer would be no. I mean, that specific question doesn't ask you for the timing of your separation. And it is tricky, but again, I would say look at the individual question and answer it as accurately as possible.
Correct. Great advice, John. We have a participant who filed for benefits on June 16th, sent in their identification info as requested by fax and then mail, and has not had any response yet. Should they just continue to wait and continue to file weekly benefits?
Again, contact your senator and your representatives in your district. In the chat is the website that you can easily find your district. On the homepage, you find your district, you put in your address, and you can email and call your senator and your two representatives. I would recommend all three because some offices are more responsive than others.
Great, thanks, John. And I would also recommend continuing to file every claim every week so that you're eligible once your benefits do start to kick in. Governor Inslee stated that 100% of claims from March and April would be cleared by last week. And clearly that's not true. Is there some truth going to be able to get out to the public, and what can we do to find out more information?
So we've heard differing stories, and the Employment Security Department is sticking with the story that they cleared the 57,000 claims that were in that cohort, claims that have been filed before June 15th. And then the ones after that are what they're working on. They were working on now. And we've heard a lot of people say that doesn't include them. And it's very hard to understand how that could be called Operation 100%. But again,
it's 100% of certain categories. Yeah, and there has been some improvement. We've gotten calls from people who finally did get their benefits in the last month. So there's some movement there, but it's not, there are a lot of categories of people who were denied, who have overpayments, people who are waiting for hearings, people who got benefits for a few weeks and were cut off and have not been restored, or people who now that they're claiming in the 100% got, let's say they filed in April, finally in July they get benefits, but they only get a month or so benefits and not the full amount. So those people are still waiting. and those bills they have to be paid. So there is some progress moving ahead, but it's not as rosy as they would like you to believe right now.
Great. And along those lines, John, we had a question come in through our email system about someone who had filed for unemployment in April and received one payment at the end of April. Since then, continues to file every week, but had not received any further payments. They have requested a hearing, but they've not received any correspondence about the hearing or even the process. Is this unusual, or what can they expect?
We get all too many calls of that fact pattern over and over. Again, call your state senator and your state representatives repeatedly, or email them as well. It's not, we're not sure whether a claim like this is just waiting of the, let's say, 50,000 hearing requests that are just sitting there now, or whether they will be working through them for correction. But again, this person, because they did receive something, is not being counted in the operation 100%, because they actually received a benefit for something. So that's why those numbers are not accurate when they claim 100%. Email, call your state senator and representatives, the governor's office as well, and Seattle Times, King 5 News, Como News, Cairo, and whatever news station is in your district or your area. These things can help get a claim moving.
Great. And just to give some context, we have one participant who let us know that she applied for benefits on April 7th and she finally received them. Thanks for our service.
All of them?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's good.
Yes. There are currently no other questions in our Q&A box. We'll wait another minute or so. If you have any questions, please ask them and we will surely do our best to answer.
Well, you know, one thing I'd like to do in this time is we've been encouraging people to contact their senators and representatives in Washington, D.C. And with this current issue with the president making this announcement and not being sure what it is that people should know that these negotiations are still going on for benefits, so that emailing and calling your U.S. senator and representative about these issues is important still, and also calls and emails to the leadership of both parties would be helpful as well, because I think there's a sense out there, some people think that, well, because there was no agreement as of Friday and the president moved on Saturday, that somehow this is over. And I think since there's no real structure in place for what the presidential announcement was, it'll become pretty clear that it really is not going to help people, because people who think when they heard news on Saturday that, well, great, I'll get at least 400 next week, are not going to get that 400 next week. So it's good to keep that political pressure on, and don't be afraid to write and call members outside of your district and leadership in both parties.
Thank you. We have an excellent question. If a person was fired for misconduct and did not appeal in a timely manner, but now cannot find work because of COVID, are they eligible for PUA?
I can say one thing about that. I don't know if this is clarification or not, but it's evidently true that if you apply, it was quite clear when PUA was established that if you had a prior voluntary quit or firing for misconduct without good cause, or firing for misconduct, or even a fraud, if that was preventing you from getting benefits, and that you had a COVID-related reason for being unemployed now, you could qualify. So they specifically said fraud would not matter, but their clarification recently is that it must have been prior. It must have been prior to your COVID-related reason. If you were disqualified from regular benefits for a cause that occurred prior to your COVID-related reason, you may be eligible for PUA. That includes prior fraud. And they go on to say PUA is a benefit of last resort for anyone who does not qualify for other unemployment benefit programs and who would be able and available to work, but for one or more of the COVID-related reasons. So it sort of depends from my and construction of that it depends on when you were fired and when you had the chance to appeal. But that certainly sounds like if you can't find work because of COVID, that's certainly a reason to apply for benefits under PUA and maybe get them.
And also, always when in doubt, apply for a program. But there's nothing to worry about if you're providing accurate information. If you're denied, you're denied. You can appeal it if you can or want to. Now, what's a COVID-related reason? I have spoken to many people in the last months, and I hear many different things from different professions. And some professions are basically totally shut down during this virus. Others are partially open, and others are very active and even in need of working people right now. So it comes down to, I think, an individual case about what kind of work you're in. So this should be something we can do individual consultation on. But I've talked to people whose professions are completely shut down and there are no jobs to be had at all, anywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, John. If a participant's employer does not follow OSHA guidelines on adequate and healthy air along with mask requirements, how should that participant handle the situation?
I'm so glad you asked that, because this is a good opportunity to again mention that the Department of Health in Washington State is open for questions exactly like that. And they've encouraged people to call them and go to their website. You can contact them that way as well. This is just the kind of question that they would be qualified to handle and give you advice.
Great, thank you. And once again, that link to the website is in the chat box. And a question regarding the potential $400 a week extended benefit. Will it backdate to the 1st of August if we become eligible in Washington State?
So this whole proposal is so up in the air, it's really impossible to talk about backdating or anything really specific at this point. It may be that Washington doesn't even go for it, because $44 million a week is a lot of money. Unlike the federal government, state governments are not allowed to exceed their revenues in terms of their budget. So there's so many imponderables and so many unanswerables at this point. I don't think backdating is going to be able to be addressed right now.
And one thing that should be clear is when the presidential announcement came out on Saturday, there were 4 items covered, and they call them executive orders, but in fact, only one of them was an actual executive order. The other were memorandum. And so, because it doesn't really follow what an executive order is, which is a president telling his agencies to do certain actions and follow certain things that are that they can do under law. And so with this only being a memo to state agencies, it's really unclear what will come out of this.
Great, thank you, John. Real quick, in the chat, I posted a link. One of our participants let us know that the National Poor People's Campaign is hosting a digital sit-in, encouraging people to call and email Mitch McConnell to encourage him to get the relief package passed. That link is now in our chat box. And also, we're hearing that the new PUA questions for weekly claims do not ask about if your hours have been reduced, only if you are unemployed due to the pandemic. One of our participants has let us know that she has emailed us all 12 of the new PUA questions So hopefully we'll have more information to provide at next Monday's webinar, but thank you for sending those questions our way.
That's great. Thank you.
One other thing I can add about putting pressure on Congress, some of the senators who are up for re-election this year in Arizona, Maine, North Carolina, Iowa, have been eager to make a deal on this. So they may be the kind of representatives you might want to contact, and you can find out what Republican senators are up for election this year.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. No other questions in the chat right now. We'll wait another minute or so if anyone has any additional questions before we wrap up for this week.
Just one recommendation, and you could probably make a lot of people happy if you could go to the Facebook site and post those 12 questions there as well, because that page is getting a lot of traffic, as you can imagine, from tens of thousands of people waiting on their benefits.
That's excellent advice, Anne. I will email back our participant and ask her to do that. I personally don't have Facebook, so I couldn't do that, but I will email her back, and that's a great suggestion.
Well, one thing that is important now is to watch the news about what is happening with this new presidential announcement. We will try to post things on our website as we get news. Follow the Employment Security website and follow news. And don't just read the headlines, read more analytical pieces on it, both from the left and the right, because it can give you more information that the headlines tend to give you more of a superficial general idea. And these type of announcements make good press, or they sound very easy and simple, but a lot's been coming out about the complexity of implementing a new program and how long it takes. And that question earlier about, will this be retroactive to August 1st, is a very good question. And it has not been addressed in what I have seen happening. There's a presumption that it should or it might, but that has not really been clearly addressed. If it takes a state 4 weeks to implement this, that will be unclear, because if it's millions of dollars of state money going into this each week to support the 100 out of the 400, 100 out of the 400, it really is very, very complicated. And I don't know what state will have money for this.
Yeah, that's a significant expenditure. So my understanding from our Q&A, and thanks participants, it looks like those questions were posted on the Facebook site. Also, I understand that they are available on the ESD website in the Guide for Expanded Benefits section. However, we're being informed that being laid off or hours eliminated or reduced due to COVID is not a question, and therein lies the quandary. So there's also 13 questions regarding PUA on weekly claims, 10 that were listed regarding school employees, and they differ from what DOL published with the CARES legislation back in March. So all just an FY and a heads up for us, things that we'll certainly be exploring if we can with ESD. Okay, here's a question. Someone who had an apprenticeship opportunity back in February or March that didn't materialize, and found out that the person offering it wasn't reachable and didn't follow through because they were a victim of COVID-19. The individual didn't think she had a case for unemployment benefits because she never got the call to start the job for the apprenticeship. Is an apprenticeship offer a sufficient offer of work to qualify? She does not have a written offer.
Well, if it's a paid one, it should be considered a job. These are very unusual and unique situations. I would apply for the benefits, and basically there's a COVID-related reason for not being able to start that. And so, I mean, I would encourage them to apply. If they are denied, they can file for an appeal and call the Unemployment Law Project for help.
Great, thank you. And one other touchback to substitute teachers. Those who have been on reasonable assurance and receiving benefits through the summer, will they be able to keep those benefits since fall is starting online?
I believe so, and they should if they have them. They've gotten them and should have gotten them, and they should continue to get benefits in the fall for any week they are on, if they are unemployed. I don't know how substitutes will be used with remote learning. And each district, I'm sure, has their own situations. But again, if you're unemployed for that week, file and answer those questions accurately. If you have any income, if you work one day, report that income.
And in the meantime, we will be looking at those new PUA policies. I know there had been a crackdown. The states have been asked for much more rigorous compliance with the rules, but I've not received rules that are really complying with the sort of descriptions people are giving here. So we will look into that this week.
Great, thank you. I see no more questions right now. Would you like to close us out, John?
Well, it's been a tough few months for everyone here, but I see some progress being made now with claims going through, and I would encourage people not to give up and keep filing for benefits, keep contacting your senator representatives, and when you get a hearing, contact our office for help.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.